From Boston, this is WEBN News.
Hello and welcome to WEBN Political Pulse. I'm Luis Mercado.
And I'm Carly Bronkema. We start with today's top political stories.
Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders won the Nevada caucus. Sanders claimed 46.8% of the vote. Former Vice President came in second with 28.2%. Former Indiana Mayor Pete Buttigieg and Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren rounded out the top four candidates. This win amplifies Sanders' arguments that he is appealing to a range of Democrats. He won the majority of the Latino vote in Nevada. His campaign used their grassroots funding to advertise in Spanish through several media platforms. Because he is the winner, Sanders is the only candidate to receive delegates in Nevada.
Justice Sonia Sotomayor calls out the government for being biased. She says the government is, quote, targeting her conservative colleagues, end quote, by asking the Supreme Court to implement conservative policies to help the Trump administration. This in response to the court's 5-4 order that makes it difficult for immigrants to obtain legal status if they use public benefits.
The White House will request emergency funds from Congress to fight the coronavirus outbreak. The amount is still unknown, but Congress is expected to raise the total from what the Trump administration asks for. The virus is also growing towards becoming a global pandemic and taking a toll on the economy, with the U.S. struggling to maintain costs of screening and monitoring people arriving from China.
Intelligence officials claim Russia will interfere in the 2020 election. President Donald Trump claims this is another partisan attack against him. He tweeted, quote, another misinformation campaign is being launched by Democrats in Congress, saying that Russia prefers me to any of the do-nothing Democrat candidates, end quote. He made the claims in response to a classified House Intelligence Committee briefing. Republicans on the committee have been vocal in their disapproval of the briefing.
Senator Bernie Sanders says his campaign has been told that Russia plans to help his campaign. It is unclear how Russia is helping the Sanders campaign. Sanders told reporters in Bakersfield, California, that he was briefed on Russia's interference over a month ago and condemned Russia's attempts to influence the U.S. elections. Sanders claims the news was released now in an attempt to interfere with primary results.
Now for the latest in international news. We head over to our international correspondent, Elena Nays.
What is going on in the Middle and East, Elena?
Thanks, guys. The U.S. and Taliban have reached an agreement to reduce violence. The agreement could be the start of a new road to peace. However, Afghan government, who wasn't a part of the talks, has serious concerns about whether or not the Taliban will honor the agreement. The Afghan government believes the Taliban has not been preparing their soldiers for peace. Some Western experts shared the same concern and fear that the Taliban is instead preparing for an increase in violence. Iranians vote in what the New York Times calls the least fair election in the Republic's history. The clerical leadership disqualified more than 7,000 moderate candidates from running, paving the way for an almost unanimous parliament. Over 3/4 of parliament members were banned from seeking re-election. It appears that Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, is hoping to manage domestic and foreign conflicts with an obedient parliament. Top economic leaders warn that the tax fight between the U.S. and Europe could threaten the global economy. During the G20's conference in Saudi Arabia, officials warned that the consequences of not reaching the resolution. Last year, the U.S. pushed for American companies to avoid some of the option to pay those taxes. European economic ministers expressed their urgency in reaching an agreement, and the U.S. in an effort to avoid the larger conflict. That's all I have for international politics. Back to Carly and Luis at the desk.
CNN announced they'll be holding 2 town halls for the top Democratic candidates tonight and Wednesday. This will be Michael Bloomberg's first nationally televised town hall since entering the presidential race. The candidates will each have an hour to answer questions from the moderator and audience members. The town halls will be held in South Carolina. Senator Bernie Sanders will kick off the town halls at 9 p.m. tonight. Mayor Pete Buttigieg and Tom Steyer are scheduled for tonight. As well, Wednesday, the town halls start with Michael Bloomberg at 7 p.m. Former Vice President Joe Biden, Senator Amy Klobuchar, and Senator Elizabeth Warren will follow.
Starting today, Massachusetts voters can cast their votes early for a presidential primary. Voters have 5 days total to vote before Super Tuesday, including today. Early voting is available in every city and town during the election office's regular business hours. Some locations will offer extended hours. For local Boston residents, early voting will be offered at City Hall. But if you fail to register by the February 12th deadline, you will be unable to vote in this primary. Registered voters also have the option to cast an absentee ballot if they meet requirements.
When we come back, we'll tell you about the new hands-free driving law.
And why some DUI convictions may be dropped. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Political Pulse.
We continue with today's political headlines.
Massachusetts Representative Ayanna Pressley and 45 other Democratic lawmakers are urging President Trump to keep the future coronavirus vaccine cost low. The Congress members wrote a letter to President Trump asking that he prevent a pharmaceutical monopoly from making the vaccine too expensive to be accessible. The Department for Health and Human Services says they have received the letter and plan to respond.
Yesterday, a new law came into effect here in Massachusetts. It bans texting on electric devices while driving, even when stopped at lights. However, this new law says that you can use an electronic device for emergencies. Drivers will only be given warnings until March 31st. After that, it'll be fines and tickets.
Thousands of Massachusetts residents may be able to appeal DUI convictions. Due to faulty breathalyzers, over 27,000 people will be eligible to appeal their convictions. The faulty breathalyzers were used statewide between June 2011 and August 2019. Evidence has shown these tests should not have been included as evidence in the sentencing. These convictions may still stand if there is testimony by police of other signs of intoxication.
Cambridge police will start issuing summons instead of arresting illegal immigrants that drive without licenses. Cambridge's policy reads, quote, "The Cambridge Police Department shall, whenever possible in the officer's discretion, and if there are no other violations causing a person to be arrested, issue a summons to court instead of taking the person into custody," end quote. The arrangement will allow the unlicensed driver to call a licensed driver to take the car home instead of impounding it.
2 top Massachusetts judges are asking ICE to stop deporting immigrants during ongoing court cases. Supreme Judicial Court Chief Justice Ralph Grant and Trial Court Chief Justice Paula Carey wrote a letter to the ICE field officer director calling the deportations an affront to justice. The judges cited a case where ICE agents stepped in and deported an illegal immigrant before his criminal cases wrapped up. The courts and prosecutors were not told about the deportation ahead of time. An ICE spokesman said the agency is working to respond via the appropriate channels.
After the break, find out which state representative has stepped down.
And how pensions for MBTA workers may be affected.
Massachusetts State Representative David Nangle has stepped down from his role. Nangle was a member of the House Committees on Ethics and Rules. The Lowell Democrat was arrested for taking money from his campaign fund to pay for his gambling habit and personal expenses. He pleaded not guilty to 28 felony counts, including tax evasion and fraud.
Charges against 2 defendants accused of assaulting police have been dropped. Suffolk District Attorney Rachel Rollins' office dropped their charges of assaulting police at last year's Straight Pride Parade. 4 other men with the same charge were placed on probation with community service requirements in January. They will have the charge of assault and battery on a policeman on their record with a dismissal date if they do not violate any probation requirements.
GOP lawmakers are demanding an overhaul of the MBTA pension program. State Senator Bruce Strahl called for a commission to look into how the money is managed within the retirement fund. Last year alone, $118.2 million was diverted from the state's general fund to cover pension shortfalls. If the retirement fund falters, it affects the retirees, MBTA operations, and the taxpayers. The commission would seek to find and address any possible issues with the fund.
That's all we have for you today. Head to our website, WEBN.TV, for more.
Thank you for joining us. I'm Luis Mercado.
And I'm Carly Bronkema. Good night.